Chapter 22, Ghost Skyship. They made wreaths from twisted branches and laid them on the graves. Harriet gave a speech about bravery and finding justice, but Arthur could barely hear because his mind buzzed with unanswered questions. Harriet took a photograph, saying it may be important later for evidence, and that Arthur should write an account in his explorer's journal when he felt up to it. As they walked back to the Thought Wolves, Maudie whispered, "What do you think happened?" Arthur shook his head. "Whatever it was, I'm hoping we'll find out more on the ship. If it was some sort of accident, why would the crew have been buried here, way out of sight, and not near the ship? Someone was trying to hide them. Eudora Vane thinks she stopped us reaching this far. Let's find out what she's trying to hide." They were at the forest edge, the only sound the haunting whistle of the wind through the trees. "We are here, cub," said Tuyuk. The four explorers shuffled through the last of the trees and stood staring ahead. An enormous white expanse spread before them, the late sun giving it a blue appearance. The great frozen lake. It was encircled east, south and west by giants of mountains, fearsome and intimidating, with great jagged points of razor teeth in tight formation. Harriet passed her binoscope to Arthur. "Look, the Victorious has nestled at the forest edge in the east, golden light shining in the portholes. Not even her great ship can make it over those mountains. No balloon can take the altitude," said Maudie. "And who knows what lies beyond?" Harriet nodded in agreement. "Quite right. They'll be preparing for the next stage on foot. This is where the competition becomes even, no matter who you are, just you and your ability to tough it through the cold and find a way forward. This is where we gain the upper hand." Harriet had already taken out her compass and other instruments from her belt and began taking readings and recording them in her book with Maudie. Arthur, however, was scanning the great plain, looking desperately for the Violetta. Parthena looped west, then dived from the sky and landed in front of him. "Best stay low now. We don't want her catching sight of you and giving us away," he said. She let out a screech and sailed low over the snow, westwards again. Then he spotted a curious mound of snow not far from them. He couldn't believe he'd missed it. "It's Dad's ship," he said, his heart thumping. "Parthena, you were trying to tell us." Harriet and Maudie stopped with their calculations and looked. "Well, it will certainly prove a useful shelter," said Harriet. "The light is fading fast, and the short night will be there soon. We'll skirt around the edge of the forest a little way so she doesn't see us, then move swiftly across to your father's ship. Rest there for a short time and get some sleep. It doesn't seem the Vane party has left the mountains yet. Let's not lose the advantage. Will you be right seeing your father's ship?" Felicity circled them in her arms. They nodded. Arthur couldn't wait to get there. Since seeing the 13 graves, he had one hope in his mind, that Dad had somehow survived and was on the Violetta. "There are only ghosts there, cub," said Tuyuk, reading Arthur's thoughts. But Arthur didn't want to hear it and pushed the thought away. He had to hang on to hope. "Can't you ask how much further the Thought Wolves can take us, Arthur?" said Harriet. "The forest is our territory. We will take you to the Ghost Skyship. Then we must get back to the rest of our pack. I hope you understand," said Tuyuk. "You've done more than enough. Thank you. Be careful. The lake is restless ice, always changing and moving. Listen to it well. We will stay with you until morning." Tuyuk bowed his head. Arthur couldn't help but put his arm around the Thought Wolf's great neck to feel his soft fur against his cheek and wished that he could stay in the protection of Toyok forever. "You are welcome in our pack any moon," said Toyok. "The thought wolves can take us to the Violetta, but they must get back to the rest of their pack at first light." "We understand, thank you." Harriet patted her wolf. Arthur looked at the vast lake ahead and the mountains and felt as though he'd shrunk to the size of an insect. "So, South Polaris is beyond those mountains?" "Yes," Harriet said. "We must find a way through. And just a small matter of getting across the ridiculously unstable ice-packed lake," said Felicity. "Yes, but that's tomorrow's problem. Right now, we make sure we stay out of sight of the Victorious and get some sleep." They wove back through the trees westward, staying hidden. Then the thought wolves rode them across the short distance to the Great White Mound. The Violetta was crushed and tilted, frozen into the ground, with great walls of snow banked against the sides. It looked as though it had become one with the landscape. The four of them looked up at the once beautiful skyship. Maudie and Arthur remembered Dad had taken them to the docks when she was being built. Arthur used to run his hand along the rails when visiting the ship. Now they were rusted and broken. "I'll climb up and check the top," said Harriet, clambering up the bank of snow. Arthur took a step closer to Maudie. "It's not too bad on the deck. Most of the snow has drifted to the bottom, and I think with a little digging we can get the hatch open." Harriet called, "I'll go and help. You two wait here a moment." Near the top of the bank, Felicity took her spoon and scooped the snow away from the side to reveal words. The Violetta. She looked down. She was a beauty and no mistaking it. Graceful shapes. I bet she flew well. Arthur put his hand to his chest and felt for the locket. "I'm nearly through. Would you like us to look first? You know, in case?" Harriet asked. "Yes," Maudie said, her voice cracking. They waited outside for several excruciating minutes, snuggled into the fur of the thought wolves beside the ship. Soon Harriet and Felicity were back, looking over the side of the deck and calling them on board. "It's all right, there's no one here," said Harriet. Arthur's heart sank again, and Toyok opened his emerald eyes and looked at him. "Be strong." "It's as though everything was abandoned. It's the strangest thing," said Felicity. Arthur and Maudie left the thought wolves, who said they would sleep the short night outside the ship, and Arthur felt glad they were staying close for a while longer. The light was fading fast as the sun set. Harriet lit a candle, and Arthur drew a long breath before following Harriet, Felicity and Maudie down the hatch and below deck. A layer of ice frosted everything. Floorboards creaked in the entire eerie still as though complaining about being disturbed. Directly on the left, a door was wedged open. It led into a compact galley with a relatively large dining table for the amount of space. It looked as though everyone had left suddenly. Dirty plates were stacked in a bucket sink, and on the table, abandoned bowls sat with spoons either in them or to the side, with small chunks of something frozen in them. "How peculiar," said Felicity. She picked some up and sniffed. "There are 14 chairs," Arthur said, picking up the one closest to him and placing it upright. He scaled the table. One place didn't have a bowl. Felicity brushed a layer of dusty ice off the work surface with her finger. The galley was all cleared up. Perhaps they were eating something from the stores. "Well, I say we take a look around the rest of the ship, then sleep on it. There are bunks below. They're frosted, but it'll be better than being outside. We can't risk lighting the fires or the Victorious will see us," said Harriet, moving to the door. "The fuel stores," Arthur said suddenly. Maudie said, "What do you think we'll find there?" "Think about it. If the Brightstorm crew did steal the fuel from the Victorious, they would have excess amounts in their hold." "Good thinking, Arthur," Harriet said. "The Victorious crew never said anything about taking fuel from the ship before heading back, but what if matches the story? Are you prepared for that?" We wouldn't have done it, Arthur said. Then let's go and see. Felicity paused at the work surface, sniffing something. Maudie huffed. Come on, I hardly think it matters what their last pudding was, Felicity.
End of part 2. Chapter 22, part 3.
But Felicity turned wide-eyed. Actually, I think it matters quite a lot, tweenies. There's a tingling in my toes and a smell to this food that I don't like. There's a tinge of something bitter, masked well by sweetness. But if my instinct serves me, I'd say there's something strange. Are you suggesting foul play? Harriet said. Arthur's whole body tensed. I can't be sure, but Arthur and Maudie looked at each other. Do you think they were poisoned? Perhaps, but surely not by their own cook, said Felicity. I doubt it, but evidence as to who did it will be difficult to come by. Take what's left with us. Maybe Gilly will be able to identify what plant was used, or we may be able to rest and then take it back to London, said Harriet. Let's search the rest of the ship and take a look at those fuel stores. They worked their way down through the ship, which revealed nothing further, then moved on to the fuel stores at the bottom. The sides of the ship were crushed in with the pressure of the surrounding ice, but they could still see instantly that the fuel stores were completely empty. Arthur felt a weight lift from his chest. Dad hadn't stolen any fuel, so someone else stole it from the Victorious in the second continent, or Edora Vane and her crew made up the story, said Maudie. Harriet took some photographs for evidence. If any fuel was stolen, I'd say it was stolen from here. Tired and cold, they moved to the bunk room, gathered as many blankets and quilts as they could find, and piled them on top of themselves. The others fell asleep while Arthur wrote the day's events in his expedition log. Eventually he shut the book and blew out the candle. The soft sleeping breaths of the others were loud in the night, chuffing into the freezing air. His thoughts rolled round in his brain as he lay on the icy bed, feeling cold to the core. I can't sleep, Maudie whispered. Me neither. I can't believe the cook would have poisoned them. That's because the cook didn't. Well, who else would have been cooking for them? I heard Harriet say to Felicity that it could be the 14th, the missing person. But think about it, Maud. That theory makes no sense. What motive would someone have to kill their own crew and ruin their chances of getting back? And then bother to go and bury them all? Yes, there is that, I suppose. And then Arthur realised. He sat bolt upright. What is it? Maudie whispered. The 14th, the missing grave. It's Dad. I know for certain he wasn't one of the 13 poisoned. How could you possibly know? You're just saying that because you're hoping he's alive. Wait, you're not thinking it was him? Of course not. Don't be so daft. But I know he didn't eat the pudding. The empty space with only a cup was his. How could you possibly know that? Dad was allergic to eggs, like me. He was always so careful about what he ate. He looked cake-like, so he wouldn't have eaten the pudding. Maudie paused for a long time. Genius, Artie, and I still think it was Eudora Vane. But she was on another ship. Think about it. If they reached here at around the same time, they would have a short time to prepare for the next stage on foot. Eudora would have come to visit. A friendly gesture before they set off to race to the Polaris. Maybe she poisoned the crew to stop them going any further, or get a head start through the mountain. But whether she intended to kill them or not, she made up the beast story to cover her tracks, paid her crew to keep quiet, and came back to Longtown after it went wrong. Maudie remained silent for a moment. All right, that makes perfect sense. Except to convict her in Longtown, we need proof. And we still don't know what happened to Dad. That's why we're going to cross to the Victorious right now.
Some unfamiliar vocabulary today. On page 235, the word expanse, an enormous white expanse spread before them, and that means a wide continuous area of something. On page 237, swiftly. Then move swiftly across to your father's ship, meaning at high speed, quickly. On page 239, clambering. Clambering up the bank of snow, meaning climb or move in an awkward, typically using both hands and feet. Page 240, excruciating. They waited outside for several excruciating minutes, meaning causing great pain or anguish. Page 241, abandoned. Abandoned bowls sat with spoons, meaning having been deserted or left. Page 245, gesture. A friendly gesture before they set off, meaning a movement of part of the body, especially a hand or the head.